Sears, thank you for such eloquent statements on behalf of the beleaguered and embattled Venezuelan people. And before I yield so proudly to another member of our Western Hemisphere subcommittee, Mr. Joaquin Castro of Texas, I'd like to say just a few words about the continuing human rights abuses and the deteriorating situation in Venezuela. As we've heard from Mr. Sears, we are dealing with a corrupt dictatorship. We're dealing with a brutal dictatorship. At least 42 dead, 90 arrested since protests began in March 2017. You can see in this poster. And this is a dictatorship that will go to all lengths to maintain its tight grip on power and silence the opposition by tear gas, by real bullets, by jailing, by intimidation. The people of Venezuela are literally dying, Mr. Speaker, on the streets from the violence of the Maduro regime. They're dying on the streets from starvation. They're dying from the lack of medical supplies. Yet they still risk their lives. This goes on each and every day in Venezuela. They go out into the streets. They demonstrate to the world that they will not be silenced, that what they desire is freedom, what they desire is democracy, what they desire is nothing less and nothing more than their God-given human rights. The very same intangibles that many in America here, we take for granted because we live in the greatest country in the world. We take it for granted that we have our freedom. But the ideals that we proudly espouse and defend around the world are alive and well in the streets of Venezuela. Venezuelans are protesting against the regime's continual assaults on Venezuela's constitutional and democratic order. Like Chavez before him, Nicolás Maduro, he has a horrific human rights record, including restrictions on freedom of expression, restrictions on the press, widespread arbitrary detentions, extrajudicial killings, torture, the list goes on and on. In its human rights reports on Venezuela last year, our own State Department noted how the Maduro regime has misused the judiciary to undermine the National Assembly, a body overwhelmingly manipulated by the opposition since December 2015, and this opposition has risen to power thanks to the vote of the people. So what did Nicolás Maduro say? Well, his Supreme Court nullified almost every action taken by the National Assembly, including to allow lawmakers to take their seats in the legislature, overturning laws to free political prisoners and grow the economy. And I'm so pleased to see that we've been joined by the chairman of the subcommittee on Western Hemisphere, Mr. Duncan, tonight. But things have only gotten worse since that time. In March, the regime-controlled Supreme Tribunal of Justice, a sad name for what it does, ruled that it would resume the responsibilities of the National Assembly. It said, we are the state. Who needs the National Assembly? That's manipulated and controlled by the opposition. We nullify its actions. We will assume the responsibility. And although what the tribunal said, they had to backtrack almost immediately because the condemnation internationally was so loud. So it partially reversed its decision just a few days later, but the damage was already done, Mr. Speaker. Venezuelans had further proof of a break in the constitutional order. Anti-regime protests have been going on, as we can see here, day after day, as hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans have taken to the streets to demand relief from the Maduro repression. According to the New York Times, before these protests even began, Mr. Speaker, the Maduro regime had arrested 6,893 people, jailed 433 for political reasons just in the past few years. And there are at least 175 political prisoners behind bars today, including Leopoldo Lopez and Daniel Ceballos. Joshua Holt, a United States citizen, Mr. Speaker, is being unjustly held for nearly a year. In September, I wrote a letter joined by my colleague to the State Department about Joshua's case. Joshua Holt, his health has deteriorated over the last month. I urge the State Department to secure his unconditional release on humanitarian grounds. We were humbled, all of us, to meet with Joshua Holt's mom, so anxious to see his release just last month. So, Mr. Speaker, despite all the Maduro regime's human rights abuses, the beatings, the violence, the murders, the repression, and the political prisoners, despite all of this, the Venezuelan people are refusing to be silenced. They are rising up, and they're protesting in even greater numbers. This is just amazing. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I'm so pleased to yield and honored to yield such time as he may consume to my good friend, Mr. Castro of Texas, from our Western Hemisphere Subcommittee. Welcome, Mr.